Hello, and welcome to Saving People, Queering Things, the supernatural podcast where Chuck had no idea how relevant his toilet paper comment would become. Today, we're pulling up to Season 5, Episode 4, The End. I'm your host, Noah, and joining me today...
My name is August, and my pronouns are they, them.
I'm Elayna, and my pronouns are she, they.
And we've got a very warm welcome back to the wonderful Valerie, returning to talk about one of her favorite episodes. Welcome back, Val.
Hi, thanks for having me. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah.
Such a great episode to come back on.
Oh yeah, screaming, crying, throwing up, always and forever about Endverse.
Oh my god.
This was an episode where I was like, I know we have to have a guest. We have to have a guest who loves Endverse and a guest who knows what they're talking about. And top of the list,
Here we
you are.
I am honored.
Love it. I mean, let's not mess around. Let's not waste any time. Now that you've met your host, it's time to catch you up. If you haven't watched Supernatural recently, here's what you've missed on the road so far. First up, Elayna is going to recap the show as a whole so far. Up to this point, everything we need to know.
You are.
I'm going to give you a countdown. 3, 2, 1, go.
So Sam and Dean are two bros who had a demon who killed their mom, and so then they and their dad become monster hunters for revenge, and then John goes missing, so they go find him, but they do, and then Dean almost dies, so John gets killed by the same demon in order to save Dean, but then Sam has these freaky powers from said demon, and he gets killed, so Dean sells his soul to save Sam, he kills said demon, but then another demon named Lilith kills Dean, and that made Sam really sad, so he killed her for revenge, and the angel saved Dean from hell and got a crush on him, and then Sam was still so sad that he started the apocalypse. Now with Super Walks free, Sam and Dean aren't speaking, and Dean maybe banged an angel twice last episode.
Oh my god, you nailed that. You got so much in there. That was so impressive.
Wow.
Genuinely, in awe of you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The speed at which you were able to talk is really, really impressive.
Very good.
I
Oh my
can't
god.
believe those were actual sound, but we got
Even coherent.
thank you. It'll never be that perfect again, so treasure it.
Here we go.
Next up, we've got Valerie to recap today's episode, The End, in 30 seconds or less. You ready?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be as eloquent as Elayna, but
That's
we
a
can try.
hard act to follow.
It's
That's
a very
okay.
hard act to follow. Putting me out to dry, man. Throw me under the bus.
Believe me when I say that I never prepare that much. I always wing it. I don't think I've once in 5 seasons ever prepared. So it's usually a hot mess.
I don't feel bad. That is the most I've ever prepared in my life, and I don't know if I'll ever prepare that much again.
It's fair. It's fair.
I think I've peaked here, guys.
No, it was great.
Wait till we have to recap like 10 seasons.
Oh my
in
god.
30 seconds.
That'll be interesting.
Might push it to 45 after season 10.
We might need to.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
So Sam and Dean are separated. Dean gets clocked by a Jehovah's Witness type figure, and Zachariah shows up, and he's like, yo, you're in 2009. I'm going to send you to 2014 to see how fucked up everything is. And Dean's like, oh no. And then he meets his future self and a really hot, high version of Cass. And then, oh no, my brother Sam said yes to the devil. And now we have to cope with this. And then right as he's about to get killed by his brother, kind of, Zachariah zaps him back and Cass saves the day.
Well
Not
done.
bad. Not bad.
No, you
Beautiful.
Very solid.
got from the first scene to the last scene, all the important stuff in the middle.
Very good.
Marvelous.
Very good. 10 out of 10.
Thank
Damn.
you. I tried.
You all did fantastic, but now it is time for us to pick some music to accompany us on our journey. Here's what we've got this week. August, did you want to go first?
Sure, I'm excited. I've been saving this song for a while to use for a mixtape. This song is Better Off High, Marcus Mumford.
Beautiful.
Love
It
it.
fits really well. This is for Cass fully and entirely. I would recommend anyone interested listen to it. It's got a very haunting sort of melody, and the lyrics are really, really suit Cass. It's got this these lines in it. Bless that medicine for bringing around that click in your head. Better off high than dead. And that's very encapsulating of I think Cass's character. I am pulling also from the fanfic sort of flesh out of Cass's character that we get in iconic supernatural fics like DTA, which I'm sure will come up again in this episode, but
I haven't heard much about that one.
Yeah. For the noobs though, what is DTA?
do you want to take that question, Val? I feel like you'll be better at describing than I will.
DTA stands for Down to Agincourt. It is a 1.1 million word work in progress fan fiction broken up into 4-book with apparently 8 total planned.
Planned?
I believe so. Written by our Lord and Savior Sepress. They are the most exquisite collection of world building. If you like slow burn, baby, this is the slow burn for you.
The slowest of burns.
The slowest of burns. They don't get together until after 500,000 words.
I have not even reached the point where they get together. It has taken me that long to read this.
Yeah, it's a silly good time. It's post-apocalyptic. They're in Camp Chickawa. There's other communities involved. There's threats. There's time travel. There's visions. It's a wonderful, silly time. And Cass and Dean deal with a lot of their demons, and it's lovely.
It's pretty brilliantly characterized, and everyone is fleshed out super interestingly, and they get to tell the story of like kind of how they get to 2014 and then what happens after it. Yeah, it's
interesting. I love that. Is it spoiler heavy for?
It's not spoiler heavy. You can read it rather without knowing basically anything about Supernatural. Like you could watch this episode, the end, which is like the precursor kind of thing, and then that's it.
Okay.
All you need to know is Sam is gone because Sam was Lucifer's vessel, and Lucifer is missing in action currently. The dean of that time period is gone. And
2014 Dean is gone.
Yeah, 2014 Dean is gone, and Dean from I don't believe it's 2009.
It's actually I think it's 2011 or 2012. I think it's season 7 Dean.
I think I do believe it's season 7 Dean that gets sent back. So he's a little bit later in like the canon timeline, but for Cass, for 2014 Cass, it is instantaneous that his Dean dies, and almost immediately season 7 Dean appears, and then he has to deal with that and mourn the loss of his Dean, but there's still a Dean there to protect and look after and get to know and grow to love.
When I first started reading it, I did not know that it was that it wasn't about 2014 Dean, and I think that was like one of the biggest surprises when I jumped into that fic, realizing that this is actually that part of the big conflict, especially at the beginning, is about them figuring out Cass being like deep in this grief for the Dean he actually has spent these years with and actually really loves, while also having to face like this younger, more optimistic Dean that he's like in a lot of ways resents for being there. Like it ends up leading them both on really interesting character arcs that are
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Go check it out. 1.1 mil. No big. You got this.
You can blow through it real quick if you don't sleep. It's fine.
Though I would also say it's not I can blow through fic pretty fast, and it has not been one I can blow through fast. It is very dense, like in the best of ways, but it's very dense. Like
the world building is very intense. I read all of it in the span of 2 weeks, and then I came out of that and was like, who am I? What year is it?
Fair.
Like, what do I do with my life now? But
it's one that I've struggled to get past the first chapter, but I feel like once I get into it, I'm going to be like even more insufferable, which I didn't know was legally possible.
Oh yeah, it's going to happen. It gets its hooks in you.
It is my goal. Like I've kind of been stalled out a little because I've been really busy and haven't had a lot of time to read any fic. My plan, I'm going on spring break in a week, and I will probably hopefully finish it. I will hopefully get through it or catch up to its current published book, which I'm very excited about. I'd like to have that experience of who am I? What is reality?
It's like I really just immersed myself in saying, well, I'm an insomniac anyway, so I'm just gonna read this and not do anything else, basically.
That was how I got to Supernatural in 2011. I got through half seasons in like a week or so.
See, anything is possible when you don't sleep. And my poor friends had to suffer through me having like breakdown after breakdown as I read it, where I'd be like, I think I understand what's happening now. I think I figured it out. 10 minutes later, I was wrong. My theories were wrong. Oh, and then another 5 minutes, I have new theories. They were also wrong. It's chaos.
I've learned from my friends who have read it already to basically not take any of my own ideas seriously, to just kind of roll with it. I get to something that I don't understand, and I'm like, that's interesting, and I keep going. I'm like, you know what? Eventually, it'll make sense.
Eventually, there will be payoff, but not today.
Damn. All that to say, Elayna, did you have your mixtape suggestion?
Yes, I do. So this is a band that I've used on several occasions before, but this is a really recently released song, so I know I haven't used it. I'm gonna go with Lost by Linkin Park. They just put this out. It was like a track that basically they had done years ago before Chester, their lead singer, had passed away, and they like did like a posthumous release, and it is such a good song, but it kind of reminded me of like the alternate version of Dean, like the 2014 Dean, because he's just feeling like he seems really far away from the 2009 that we're dealing with. He seems very lost from like who we've always believed Dean to be. And so like there's this one like verse where he says, "But I'm tired, I will always be afraid of the damage I've received, broken promises they made, and how blindly I believed." And so it just very much reminded me of him. So that is mine this week. It's very good. Go listen to it. And if you're a big fan of Linkin Park, it will make you cry hearing Chester's voice again.
Solid pick.
Thank you.
I went with a song that I tried to pick a while ago, but was recommended into holding off and waiting. And I'm pretty sure this is the perfect moment. I'm gonna pick "Journey to the End of My Life" by All Star Weekend, because Dean takes a little journey to the end of his life, and he wants to see if he's loved. Is he hated? Is he more in your face, or is he a little bit more understated? It fits really well, and is a more fun alternative. Valerie, how about you? What have you got?
To anyone that knows me, they know that I am a huge fan of the musician Frank Turner, so it would come as no surprise that the song I chose is one of his, and it's a song called "Untainted Love."
Yeah.
Similar to August, it is a bit more DTA leaning than The End leaning, but the song kind of goes through all of these memories the protagonist has of being high in various places and the way that they lived while high. And then at the kind of crescendo of the song, it goes, "In the final analysis, when it all comes down to it, I went right up to the light, and it turns out I didn't want to die because the one thing I never accounted for was love, untainted love." And that's like very much DTA Cass and all of the drugs that he uses, and especially using them to cope with his grief over losing Dean, his 2014 Dean. And then he finds season 7 Dean, and he wasn't expecting to find him, and to have that untainted love that makes him want to not be high 24/7 because he doesn't need to be to cope anymore. And it gives me brain worms in like a really satisfying way.
It's a really beautiful pick. It does make me feel a lot of things. I knew you were going to probably bring Frank Turner, and this was a good choice.
Thank you.
It was very good. I feel like we've got a really good, nice blend of emotions for this week. Just fantastic.
Yeah, but a lot of emotions.
I mean, it's this episode.
Not.
This episode is iconic and so important to not only just the fandom, but like the story of Supernatural. We've got a lot to say when we get to the episode itself.
Well, now that we've got our mixtape playing, let's get to this week's hunt. Today we are exploring The End, the 4th episode of season 5. This week's tarot card is the 5 of Bones. August, could you read us the card description?
Yeah, so if you don't know, we're using the Supernatural Tarot deck, and we have selected cards for each episode. This week is the 5 of Bones, so the 5 of Bones in the Supernatural deck is actually the Zachariah card.
Ooh.
I'll post a picture of this that week on our Twitter page. And so I'm just going to read the card description, and then Elayna might be able to give us a little more from their understanding of tarot in a more general sense. So Zachariah is tasked with convincing Dean to allow Michael to use him as his vessel in the great battle against Lucifer. He gets increasingly frustrated, desperate, and cruel as Dean continues to refuse. Zachariah's toxic, manipulative nature and the end justifies the means persistence personify the 5 of Bones tarot card, which represents conflict, unrest, and tension. And then when this card is reversed, it is the discontent is turned inward. So it's reversed. This card is about inward struggle. So I think there's interesting things on both ends there, both external conflict and inner conflict that kind of suit different characters. So that can hopefully give us some things to think about as we talk about this episode. But Elayna, you want to add any other context?
Indeed. So this card, what I love about this deck is comparing them to the original like tarots, and this one compares to the Wands cards. So the 5 of Wands, very similar in its meaning. It's basically a card for disagreement and tension and conflict. So really nails this entire episode on the head, I think. And it typically will depict like 5 people using like these wands almost kind of in a sword-like fashion, and they're all clashing at the same time. So it's very much a card that is like depicting strife and things not going as they should. So I thought that was kind of cool for this week.
Yeah, it was very fitting.
Cool. That gives us some, I think, great things to kind of lead off of when we get into the episode.
I mean, speaking of, where do we want to start? There's absolutely so much in this episode.
I feel like I would love to hear from Noah, maybe to start, because you're a first-time watcher, and then we can get into analysis, but like initial reactions from Noah, I would love to hear.
Okay, I mean, right off the bat, zombies, love zombies. Zombie stories are very interesting, and the brothers in that situation, or in this case, brother, is always interesting. I love that. Hated the intro bit before the zombies, when his whole conversation with Sam talking about how we're the fire and oil of the apocalypse, we aren't stronger together. No, not okay. Didn't like that part. But then, bam, zombies. Okay, cool. Immediately, his instinct was like to look for Sam, right? Because like, oh, okay, what does that really tell you about yourself, Dean? Come on, get your head out of your ass. Huge standout is the conversation he has to convince future him that he's really Dean. Oh my God.
The story that changed a million fanfics.
How are you going to listen to that conversation and not agree that he's queer in some sort of way?
I don't know. You have to do a lot of gymnastics to
explain around it.
Yeah. It's a pretty gay episode in general for him, but that moment is boy howdy.
Yep. Yeah, seeing Cass in this future was fantastic. Love it. He's mortal, which is very interesting. Hi, which was great.
Thought you'd gotten over trying to label me, Dean.
That was such a good line. Their chemistry was just so good. And the way he instantly picked up that he wasn't the right Dean, beautiful. Lucifer Sam, so good. First of all, terrifying and haunting, and so vastly different from Sam that it was pretty superb acting.
And we've we've given Jared some crap before for some of his acting choices. This is one of the moments where I actually am like, no, I've always thought this is a good moment for him, bringing something totally different energy to Lucifer than he brings to Sam.
Oh yeah, body language, facial expression, all of it. It was gorgeous.
The white suit is a
white suit. So look, it was a very good episode. I really, really enjoyed it, and time travel is always a blast. You know, examining whether he can change things or not, and how the zombie rules work was just fascinating. Loved it very much.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it then.
Scariest episode is President Palin.
Yeah. This was 2009 when this episode was released, and I think it's really interesting what 2009 thinks about 2014 and what about what would happen in an apocalypse. Like, I think one of the most interesting things in apocalyptic stories are always like how the current moment impacts how you feel about what you think an apocalypse would be. And we've talked a little bit off the podcast. We've been talking about The Last of Us, which has just finished airing a handful of weeks ago, its first season, and how setting it in 2003 impacts like how the apocalypse sort of plays out. And I think this is another setting it, this is 2009, they set it in 2014. The things they imagine as apocalyptic are really interesting.
Yeah, and apocalyptic media always is reflecting the current fears of that culture back to it. So it's interesting that in the case of The Last of Us, the zombies basically come into being because of climate change. Spoiler. But it's very interesting that even though this is, a Croatoan virus and that's a demon virus that basically makes you a zombie in the end, that we're still getting that sort of bleed through of real world fears, which include President Palin and, bombing various cities and things like that.
Very militaristic too, all of the military takeover, the bombing, the shutting down of different borders, like all of that in the just after the 2008 election, very, very interesting.
And the 2008 recession.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, all the banks are failing. That sounds a lot like 2023.
9 years
Okay.
ago, but is
Nothing-
it today?
Yeah.
And I've seen this episode before, and I didn't like the ending.
Any episode too that deals with like a pandemic of any kind is
A little triggering.
yeah.
It's just been a little bit reframed since it originally came out.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and I don't know how the early days of the COVID pandemic was for you three lovely hosts, but I'm from New York, so it's really taken on a way that I view apocalyptic media much differently now,
Mhm.
especially when you get those like glimpses of early pandemic
Yeah.
or apocalypse things. Like I just rewatched all of The Walking Dead with a friend of mine, and like now we're watching Fear the Walking Dead, and that focuses way more on like the slow decline and like we can trust the government, it will be fine. And it's like maybe we can't trust the government. And like in the first episode of The Last of Us, seeing that, you know, people don't really know what's going on, but there's more sirens and emergency vehicles on the streets, and then there's weird things happening, and then no one's on the streets, and then everyone's on the streets. It very much kind of shocked me back to being in March 2020 and everything is shut down. We had to get a special note to give us permission to go to Manhattan and get stuff for my dad's work office, so he could work from home. And just being on Broadway in Midtown Manhattan and there not being anyone else on the street in the middle of the day, very, very scary and strange.
Yeah.
So watching that now, having lived that experience, is a very different way of viewing this kind of media. And it makes me have a lot of weird feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chuck even mentions the toilet paper, which, I mean, okay, yeah.
Freaking weird.
He knows.
Which, yes, is a joke, but also I have some really visceral memories of like going to the store. One of the early, like I think the first time I went to a store right after my province had locked down, because again, we didn't know it was really coming until it happened. Like we knew things were bad. I don't know. In my province, it was declared a pandemic on like the 10th or 11th. By the 14th, it was like we had a case in my province. By the 17th, we were fully locked down, which was actually my 25th birthday. It was the day that everything locked down. It was surreal. Like I remember sitting on my couch and watching everything. The kids had just gone off school, like the kindergarten grade 12 kids had just gone to spring break, and they announced on the first day of spring break that like, no, we're just closed now. Like this is not where you already knew it was going to be more than the 2 weeks that spring break was. I remember going to the store and like not thinking, going to the store and needing to get toilet paper and being like, oh, there isn't any. And I hadn't even like it happened so fast. And I think that like that sense of like kind of everything like doom hanging over you where you just don't know what's going to happen, like that feeling was so present. I remember walking by the playground of the park near my house, and it's all taped off with yellow caution tape, and there's just this sense in the air of like everyone's just sort of waiting for what comes next, and we're not even sure what is going to come next. And obviously in this episode, the pandemic is very active in a sense that it turns people into zombies, and then they are aggressively trying to infect the rest of the world. You know, that's
which
different.
Some people, it felt like some people were trying to do that down here in Texas, but you know.
It feels like New York City's mayor is trying to do that right now. He's like, we don't need masks. There's an increase in crime right now. Everyone take your masks off so that we know who you are when you enter a store. And I'm like, no. And he's like, you could put the mask back on once people see you're not there to rob them. And it's like, that's not how COVID works, sir.
Or how crime works, for that matter.
It is how racial profiling works, though. So...
Well, I mean, New York City's mayor right now is an ex-cop. So what do you expect?
Okay. Yep. There you go. Anywho, sorry. To divert back from real life traumas back to the episode.
This episode just hits so different now.
I couldn't watch it for a while because it was too much. I was like, nope, don't like this.
There's something about pandemic related media once you've actually experienced a pandemic that just is it lends this sort of like sobriety to, you just can't.
It's a little too relatable.
Yeah.
Bobby being gone is the most unrealistic part of this for me. I want to know how that happened. I want to know when it happened, why it happened. Does DTA touch on that?
It does, and it will pull at your heartstrings. Also, there's a very wonderful moment in DTA that I'm not going to spoil for people, but it's related to Cass and Bobby's relationship. And when you get to that part of the story, you're going to sob. But
oh boy,
there is it thankfully fleshed out a bit more because Bobby is a survivor and he's not one to let anything kind of get in his way, wheelchair or no. So it's very upsetting to see that wheelchair full of gunshot holes in the beginning of the episode when Dean first lands in 2014, because you're like, yeah, what did happen here?
What happened that Bobby wasn't able to survive it?
Yeah.
Bobby, who has survived everything that has been thrown at him in the apocalypse. Bobby, who usually is the one that has the knowledge and the expertise to get other people through it. And I think like that, it's also like really interesting to see that like that's where Dean first goes. Like Dean's first thought is to go to where Bobby is. And that like obviously is very heartbreaking in the context of this episode of like that he looks for his parental figure, his sense of security.
And it's not even that he's gone, it's that his house is in shambles. His house has been apart. Yeah, his house, somebody raided that house looking for something. And what were they looking for? And who did it? And
why is nobody left here? Why have they clearly ransacked it and abandoned it?
Right. There's no corpses. What's happening?
And is that where he finds Baby at Bobby's?
No. He finds Baby rusted out at Camp Chautauqua.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Were you about to say something to Elayna? I think you had started to.
The way that he seeks out Bobby is because when you think about it, Bobby is really the only like physical anchor point for him in the world because like he and Sam are just always on the road. So like at this point in the series, it's the only place that would make sense for him to go. Like where the heck else is he going to go? The roadhouse is burned down. Like he's got, at this Bobby's is home to him.
Yeah. Which I think makes then the camp, like Camp Chautauqua is where this Dean, where 2014 Dean has set up home and camp. But for 2019, it's this totally disorienting place where even the things that would make him feel at home, like Baby, have been like destroyed. Any sense of security that he could have is destroyed.
Just like, what did they do to you? I'm like, oh, honey.
He's so sweet about that. That brings him face to face with himself. And how does he convince himself that he's really him? Talks about Rhonda Hurley and her panties that he wore at one point. And
when he was 19.
And he liked it. Confirmed. I mean,
when he was just a young twink.
Been there, done that. It's a part of the process. You just...
It's
the things that the writers put in for Dean throughout the series that is canon. It is in the show. Yeah. And I'm just like, we all heard him say those things, right?
This is early.
We all heard it.
This is early season 5.
Yeah. And he's talking about wearing panties. Can you see season 2 Dean talking about that? No, absolutely
admitting to that?
The character growth. You love to see it.
Yeah, there's a sort of like interesting thing that happens with, and it happens throughout this episode with 2019 and 2014 Dean, where there's this understanding of like, I don't have to lie to you about who we are. I don't have to lie to you about the panties. I don't have to lie to you about all of your tells. I don't have to lie to you about your attitude towards the world. I don't have to lie. Like if you try to lie to me, I will be able to suss that out. Like I will see if you are lying to me, and I will see if you are lying to other people around me. They may not figure it out, but I will know. Like it forces Dean and allows him to be honest with himself in a way that we don't often see in the show. And I think that is really interesting in this episode, especially since 2019 and 2014 Dean are both so similar and so different, which I think kudos to Jensen's acting in terms of like carrying 2014 Dean so differently, like that you never have to guess who is who in a scene.
Yeah, his whole demeanor shifts when he's in that warrior mode.
And I think the biggest piece that I noticed this watch through was just the absence of like humor. Like I think we know Dean as a character who brings a lot of humor into his words, his banter. It's a lot of the way he copes. It's also a lot of the way he signifies that he still has some semblance of hope. It's a lot of the ways he forms relationships. The fact that 2014 Dean does not do any of those things. He's very like just the job. He's a lot more honestly like John in the sense of like he's like, this is the job and anything else is extemporaneous, and I'm not going to utilize any of those like the social strategies that Dean usually uses that involve humor. This Dean doesn't use. And that's like the biggest one of the biggest divergences between the two of them. And you kind of have to ask that question of how do we get from 2019 to 2014 Dean, which this episode only sort of answers.
Only a little
and
bit.
DTA answers a lot more.
A lot of loss in terms of like how does he get there?
Yeah, because he goes out on that mission and then comes back and shares a beer with somebody and then shoots him immediately. Like pretty heartless compared to the Dean we know. It's a significant difference.
And we find out that it's like Croatoan's been happening for 2-3 years at this point. It was hitting the major cities in 2012, so we're looking at least 2 or 3 years of it being really bad and of him and Sam being completely estranged.
Which hurts so much.
Talk to Sam in about 5 years.
Well,
also he treats Sam as if he is dead, not just potentially alive in his host vessel for Lucifer. He speaks of Sam as if he's dead. And I think that really harkens back to August's comparison to John, where John lost Mary and he becomes this mission-oriented, militaristic douchebag. And Dean loses Sam and he becomes that same person that he never wanted to be. And I think that's very interesting.
He doesn't have anything else he doesn't have any hope for a future, because his best case scenario is he kills the devil and stops the end of the world, but that won't bring Sam back in his mind. That won't rescue Sam. Even if Sam is still alive in the vessel, Sam is not surviving. So just like John, like no matter what, John gets revenge. Mary doesn't bring Mary back. And I think one thing the show didn't get to explore with John was like, if he had been able to kill Yellow Eyes and live after, what would he have done next? And this is where we get to see, Dean is
following
like
in his footsteps.
And like he's not thinking I don't think he's really thinking of a future beyond killing the devil, because that is really his only purpose at this point.
Not to use the episode title, but I think he sees that as the end for him. Like he doesn't see a life for himself beyond the end of this mission that he has to carry out.
No, that was a really interesting touch about past versus future Dean. Whenever they're talking about Sam, is future Dean reveals that he hasn't spoken to Sam in a while. Past Dean says, you weren't with him, haven't talked to him since and then he changed it to, we never went to go look for him, which like he blames future Dean, like, hey, you weren't with him. He blames him for that at first, but then he accepts responsibility and is like, we never did that. Like we both fucked up.
That's brutal.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Starts to realize that that's currently the trajectory that he is on. Like currently he is also not talking to Sam and not intending to talk to Sam.
Like, yeah, because he just got done telling Sam that he doesn't think they should talk. And then he gets 5 years into the future. And that 5 years in the future, he's like, yeah, I haven't talked to Sam in 5 years. It doesn't take much to figure out that 2 + 2 is 4 here.
Okay, let's talk about Cass.
Oh my gosh.
Their first, no, sorry, back up. Let's talk about Chuck, and then let's talk about Cass. Because Chuck is here.
His hair looks so much better. The short hair works better. He's so much more together. He's here. And Dean's not ready for it, for sure. Chuck's just, bam, here.
Chuck is it's fascinating that Chuck is here, given, spoilers, what we know about who Chuck really is. Him being here
for 5 years.
I think that's exactly why he's there.
Yeah, I don't quite know what I'm trying to say about that.
So God is just hanging out with the person trying to kill Lucifer, but not really doing much to help. And
God is complaining about the lack of toilet paper when he alone could create more toilet paper.
Gets me a little concerned that we won't get canon confirmation that Chuck is God for 5 years.
God, was it really that long?
I guess you'll have to wait and see, Noah.
So frustrating.
Yeah.
I guess you'll have to wait and see.
It is wild having Chuck there. And like, it makes sense that if knowing what the characters know, that he is at the very least a prophet, that if this is the end of everything, then you would want the prophet to be within your camp, even if the connection to heaven is severed like it is for Cass. It's just very weird having him there because he is basically useless if he's cut off from heaven.
Yeah.
And they kind of, it's implied he's just in charge of like everyone's supplies and things like that, given his toilet paper comments and things like that. And I think it is really interesting that DTA kept Chuck just as a prophet. Like, I know he's God now, but like, no, in this story, he is just a human. And it changes the implications when you look at that story and you have to remove that from your mind versus when you look at this story. And if you're playing along in real time, not knowing he's God, it means one thing, but then in hindsight, once you know he's God, it changes everything around Chuck. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Because it does open up those questions like, what are you doing here besides being like getting front row seats to your favorite television show?
Which is the thing that with Chuck is like he is put himself in a position to have a lot of control. He manages their supplies. He knows everything that's going on at camp. He's connected to everyone. He works closely with the leadership, but he also plays the kind of role where nobody thinks he has much power. Because again, yes, you're the guy that handles the toilet paper, but you're like just the guy that handles the toilet paper. And it puts him in this like perfect position to see everything that's going on and to pull strings without being obvious about it. And I think that's like, in retrospect, makes him really interesting. And it makes things that he says, like I think particularly when Dean asks about Cass and he says, I don't think Cass is going anywhere. And when you think about it, like from the meta point of like Chuck being like, I can't seem to get Cass out of this story. I don't think Cass is going anywhere. I don't think Cass is going to be removing himself from this story or from Dean. It's really
that is an
interesting.
angle I had not considered, and I feel like you just shifted my worldview.
Damn.
Holy crap.
I don't think Cass is going anywhere.
It's so cool how he is in that I'm invisible, I'm a fly in the wall, but I'm the ghost hand guiding everything kind of position, and very insidious. And it makes me like vaguely angry, but also vaguely impressed.
Yeah.
Because I'm always bouncing between what I feel about Chuck at any given point. And the more I think about Chuck, the more conflicted emotion-wise I get.
Well, and then think about it in like this particular story too, is that this is Chuck showing up and being an integral part of an alternate future. Like this is an alternate future Zachariah has thrown Dean into, and Chuck is there with this agency in this moment, and like the implications of that, and of like what do the angels know? What do the angels have control of when they throw Dean into this situation? How much of this is meticulously designed to lead to Dean being most likely to cave to their demands? And how much of this is like, how much is the angels and how much is Chuck? And the like questions of that are very, not ones we get answers to, but they're very interesting.
Not ones we get answers to. I love those supernatural questions. Dean's face, though, whenever Cass suggests, why don't we all get washed up for the orgy? His face was so shocked, so surprised. Beautiful.
His face was like, where's the sign up?
Well, we've just come out of 503. If there's one thing I know for sure, Burner, you're gay, and I'm not going to let you die a virgin.
5 years does a lot.
Obviously for Cass, this is 5 years and a whole lot of apocalypse. For Dean, this is like a couple of days.
And if we go by the theory presented last episode,
He lost his virginity 5 years ago, and everything's been different since.
that. But there's also if we are to believe that Dean and Cass hooked up, like he just got done hooking up with Cass like a couple days prior, and now here he is seeing Cass be like, oh yes, let me and these other fine ladies get ready for the orgy. Like, what?
And it had to have been so jarring to have that Cass that was, a huge warrior leader of heaven that's fully having a panic attack in a strip club to so cavalier and blasé about, we're just, we're meditating together. We're having all these drugs. Now we're going to have lots of sex. Who cares? The jump from one to the other for Dean must have been, head spinning.
Well, everything he's known of Cass has been as that warrior, as that like very straight-laced, like Dean has been pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. Dean has been constantly like being like, live a little, Cass, like let loose a little, rebel a little. And now he sees that Cass has like fully rebelled against his angel side to the point where he is no longer has his angelic powers. Like he no longer has his wings. He's human. And Dean's like, okay, so this is what it looks like if Cass actually fully rebels. This is what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's a choice, but the facial hair works. So
God does it work.
God bless everyone who was involved in making sure that Cass got, like that Misha got to do this with Cass in season 5.
Fantastic.
Proud of them. Past Dean commenting on future Dean's choices when they're in a group setting is always going to be amusing to me. Catching him up on how he cheated on Risa or how he's torturing again. Like it's a nice little commentary that he gets to poke fun at.
It's a nice little visual representation of what my anxiety feels like.
Yes, exactly.
Also, that first scene when you first get Dean in the camp together where everyone can see, and you get that line from Dean of like, me and him, pretty messed up situation we got going, and the camera pan choices in that moment again are like slide right past 2090, and the focus of the camera, like we slide past Dean, but the focus of the camera goes to Cass, which is a choice
for sure.
Like just the implications of the pretty messed up situation is not, yes, it's about Dean and Dean, but it's also the camp knowing that there's some pretty messed up something going on with Dean and Cass.
I love it when the editors and the camera people do the Lord's work for us.
It's Chuck. That's why he's there. Change that camera focus a little bit.
The I like past you gets me every single time.
Yes.
He's just so giddy about how he says it.
Because it's nothing for him. His concept of time is vastly different from humans still.
But I think most important and interestingly is that past you still has that hope that current Dean doesn't have, 2014 Dean. And I think this is an interesting point to bring up now, is that the word apocalypse means revelation and divine truth. And that's because an apocalypse is supposed to show you the truth and hope that you can face despair and that we can all keep going. And so, of course, an angel whose main focus is to prepare you for the revelations, the apocalypse, is going to like the Dean that has that hope and not the Dean that lost that hope.
Oh, well said.
It just hurts.
No.
Oh, and you think about like the idea of like apocalypse being like revelation of the truth, and then you think about like when Cass pokes at his Dean, and reveals that our fearless leader is all too skilled at the art of getting to the truth, and it's that like dig at, oh, we're torturing again. There's like these layers of Cass being able to see through Dean and go like, there is something there that has happened to you that has turned you into someone that no longer has this hope. But past you is still able to see. Past you is still able to go, whoa, we're torturing again? Great, classy.
And I think it's also interesting because, most apocalyptic tales are the ones that are focusing on the community that comes out of the apocalypse that you find. And like, how do you rebuild society, and what values do you keep and what do you shed? And it's the way that we kind of channel our anxieties, as we've talked about before, and like they reflect the cultural situation that's going on, but we don't get that. We're getting the breaking down of that community that they have built up in this episode. So if the apocalyptic story is coping with this idea of fear, and not just the fear of, outsiders, be it, we're worried about foreigners, we're worried about climate change, we're worried about viruses invading our bodies, but also the fear of losing yourself and your own personal identity identity. Like, what if people come in that have different values than me? And what if people come in that look different than me? And what if a virus comes in and it changes my body and changes my health situation? You're losing a sense of self along that way. So I think it's also super interesting that Dean's like, we're torturing again, because he hated having to torture.
Mhm.
So the fact that 2014 Dean is just like, I did what I had to do, so you get to that divine truth of the apocalypse and revelation is so layered and like delicious to think about, because Dean has ultimately lost himself in 2014, when this is a moment when he should have found himself fully.
Yeah, Dean's focus is not like, as much as this Dean has built this community is like like the reason Dean has built it is single-mindedly to kill the devil. And we see by the end of the episode that he is willing to sacrifice that community to accomplish that goal, which is also, again, very much like early seasons John, basically being like, the community, any relationships I have with other hunters, any relationships I have with the community are for a goal. And as soon as we accomplish that goal, if sacrificing you means we accomplish that goal, I'm willing to sacrifice you for that.
And even willing to sacrifice Cass.
Which is like the ultimate measure of losing his own humanity. And what makes him Dean is he's already lost Sam and he's like willing to lose Cass.
The thing that gets me the most about this episode is that line where he's just like, you're gonna feed your friends into a meat grinder, and Cass too. Like, the fact that Cass is separate, like, he lists his friends and then he mentions Cass. I'm sorry, but like, why isn't Cass like just in the category of your friend? Like, that has always been one of my hugely admissible pieces of evidence in the Cass means more to Dean than just a friend, and like more than just a like brother in arms or whatever. Like, there is really.
And that 2009 Dean can tell that about 2014 Dean. Like, he knows this is not his Cass. Like, this is a future alternate version of Cass, but he still sees right through his future self. You know, he says, you know, I know your lying expressions. I've seen them in the mirror.
And even at this point, he only knows Cass for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
So even at that point, so fresh into their relationship of sort, he knows what Cass means to him, and he can infer what Cass is only going to mean more to 2014 Dean.
And by watching, he's watched them interact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In some ways, even more because of the way Cass reacts to Dean, because of the way that, like, Cass, I just need to confer with our fearless leader for a minute. Cass, I'll go with you. Cass, like, I'll rally the troops. Like, he sees Cass's like undying loyalty to this version of Dean, in the same way that Cass had that sort of undying loyalty to Heaven.
If Cass means this much to him, like, after only a year, what is he going to mean to him after 5 years and an apocalypse, you know?
And after losing Sam, if Cass is all he has left.
And Bobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of close people that he has left. Because Dean isn't, like, 2009 Dean isn't necessarily like close buddies with Chuck. Like, he knows Chuck, he cares about Chuck, I'm sure, but like, that's not someone that he's very close with. But he knows that his closeness with Cass is only going to grow, and he's already incredibly close with him. So
Chuck couldn't tell that past Dean had replaced future Dean, whereas Cass picked it up immediately. I feel like Sam would have too. I mean, he does already, but that's because of a different situation.
Yeah.
Sam, I feel like Sam and Bobby would have been able to tell.
Though I think Chuck knows and is just playing with Dean because of
That's
the
also-
dual God thing.
Yeah.
But I agree that, like, even if regardless of how you interpret Chuck, like, he doesn't give any visible, like, no one else figures it out.
Yeah. Brings us right to Lucifer's feet.
How dare you.
Executing future Dean is so raw, and just there's no panache or there's no ceremony about it.
Yeah, it just happens. It's just
It's
a
just
thing
there.
that happens.
And then it gets to the intense conversation of it all, with Dean having to look Sam in the eyes, but it not being Sam that's looking back.
oh, it's brutal.
Brutal.
This is like the most we've gotten from Lucifer as well about his own like motivation and his own relationship with God. You know, he gives a little history lesson, and then, you know, and paints himself as like, I just loved God so much and I didn't love humans. And God was like, God cast me out for it. And then that whole, does the punishment fit the crime I think it's just really interesting how they're characterizing Lucifer in contrast with the other angels who are still on God's side, presumably.
Who also make it very clear they hate humans. Like they don't like humans any more than Lucifer did. He was just bolder about it.
But like seeing that was just really, it was very unfair. His props for that one.
He deserves all the props. He did very, very good on making that be just creepy. It got under your skin and it feels like it's something that's very wrong with the format of the show in general.
Another like meta thing that I really love, the choice they make, the line that Lucifer says, whatever choices you make, whatever details you alter, we will always end up right here. I win, so I win. Which like both from a Lucifer standpoint, but also from a meta Chuck standpoint.
Ugh, thanks, I hate
Makes
it.
me feel, again, like you said earlier, Val, like I feel so complex about Chuck. Like Chuck is such an interesting, like his development throughout the show, but then you get a line like that where it's being said by Lucifer, but it could just as well be being said by, you know, it's being said by a character, but could it also be said by the storyteller?
It's also a very little brother thing to say. Well, so I win. And even though Sam is gone, it's a very little brother to older brother way of being like underlining his point. You know, I win no matter which way you look at it. I'm the little brother who's winning. I'm the devil who's winning. I'm God who's winning. I'm the writers who's winning.
Yeah. You are the hamster caught in the wheel. Like,
right.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. You can go through all of the tunnels. You're still in a cage.
It's like, is the monologue being delivered to Dean, the audience, or are we the audience, Dean? Like,
yeah.
Oof, very, very meta episode.
And yet still, Dean comes out with Zachariah and is like, yeah, I learned a lesson, just like not the one you wanted me to.
The way that he says,
Nah, just so nonchalant about it. Very, I know you just literally traveled me through time, but
not convincing enough.
Do better. Ugh.
We also, I realized, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but this episode has one of my favorite silly little cast lines. I'll just wait here then. Just
Yeah.
Noah, just remember that line, okay? Do me that favor.
It was so sweet. He was so heartbroken.
Yeah, so wholesome though.
Yeah.
But then the way that he also says that, you know, there's a note in the doc of the affection when he says don't change.
Yeah, it's pretty nice timing, Kaz. We had an
I
appointment.
love it so much because obviously this is after Lucifer Rises, 422. So you get those, and I think 422 is when you really start to see Dean kind of falling for Cass.
Yeah, I agree.
And in that moment where Cass is like, we're making it up as we go, that look on Dean's face is just like, oh yes, it's happening.
That's when he becomes Dean Heart Eyes Winchester.
Right. And I love it because you get to see that fondness bleed through into Dean so much. And it's, you know, that's still very recent in the story for our Dean. And then you get the kind of callback at the end of the episode when they're saying, well, we keep each other human and we'll make our own future. I guess we have no choice. That is saying it just with different words that they're making it up as we go. And I really enjoy that we get that underscoring of free will is at the center of what's happening.
Yeah, that's what this story is about. The story is about all of the universe and destiny and God and the angels can be like, we're going to teach you a lesson about the inevitability of your fate. And Dean's still going to look at the people around him. He's going to look at Sam and he's going to look at Cass and he's going to say, we're going to make our own future. And we're going to ignore everyone who says that we can't win.
And here we are, season 1 finale of the Winchesters.
Oh, I can't talk about that. I have too many feelings.
My emotions.
Emotional overload.
It doesn't end.
No.
It doesn't end. We make our own future. Guess we have no choice.
You can write your own story. Get fucked.
So
I am too emotionally fragile for you right now, Dean Winchester.
Actually,
I was so happy that they actually are ending this episode on good terms, the brothers together, moving forward. That's all I've wanted for so long.
Poor Noah has been sitting through since like 419, sitting through, oh no, they're not getting along. Oh no, they're fighting. Oh no, Sam's locked in the panic room. Oh no, Sam's broken out of the panic room. Oh no, Sam popped the devil out of his cage. Oh no, they're splitting up again?
Just a lot of oh no's.
Yeah.
A lot.
Like that TikTok sound of the, oh no.
Yeah.
Once again, we have the perfect opportunity when he says, "What made you change your mind?" He could have told him a little bit more about the future and said, "Hey, I went to the future again." But well, then that opens up a whole door about Lucifer, I guess. Doesn't want to have that conversation.
I think there's a few reasons that this 2019 doesn't want to share about everything that he sees in 2014.
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense.
There's some Cass related reasons, there's some Sam related reasons, there's some himself related reasons. Like, I don't think he wants to admit to that.
It's fair.
Do y'all think
That's
he
fair.
ever tells them?
I hope he does.
I don't think he does. Dean doesn't do emotions, and I feel like recounting what he lived through there would cause a lot of those. He is very
Yes.
much a bury it down. So I don't think he would have said anything. Or if he did, it'd be like, I went to the future. It was a bad time.
I think he might tell them about Croatoan. I think that would maybe be the extent of it. I think he would maybe, if it was strategic and it was the right time and it needed to be said, telling them that he was thrown into a future where there was Croatoan in 2014. I could see that coming up maybe around 2014.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't think he's going to talk about the kind of what Cass becomes or Sam and Lucifer, because like we're going to get further into like the show. I think there's some reasons in later elements of the show as to why he wouldn't sharing that. And I think Dean is not going to share something that he does not want to happen because he doesn't want to
write it into existence.
Yeah. And, Repression Boy.
Woo.
Mostly
Is
that.
that his real name? Repression Boy.
Just because we need to quote it's the end, baby. That's what decadence is for. Why not bang a few gongs before the lights go out? But then that's just how I roll. It's just one of the.
Oh, wait. Do you have the full quote of that, of what was cut? In the script of this episode, and it's cut. What Cass actually says in that scene was supposed to be, the only thing I think we have left, Dean and me, is each other. If Dean says it's time to go out in a blaze of glory, win or lose, so be it. I'm in.
Fine.
But then that's just how I roll. Are you kidding me?
The idea of like, that's
what?
You've never seen that before, Elayna?
Today years old.
The only thing we have left, Dean and me, is each other.
Dean and
I
me.
hate this show. I love the show.
Win or lose, so be it. I'm in. What was the reason? What was the reason? Explain it to me and try and make it not sound gay. What was the reason?
There's no reason. There's no.
Nope.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote Dean says to Cass at a later time that I really want to say right now, but I don't want to ruin it for Noah.
Yeah, don't ruin it for Noah.
I'm probably going to text it to you though.
That sounds like reasonable. And this is insane dialogue choices.
Proud of them though. See you in 5 years. I'm pretty sure Lucifer even says supernatural piece of crap at one point, which
No, Dean says it.
Oh, Dean does? Okay.
Yeah,
He's
'cause
talking about
you're the
Lucifer.
same, belly to the earth, supernatural piece of crap.
It's just a little statement on the show.
Also just want to point out what Lucifer, the list of things Lucifer says Dean won't do. He said he won't give up, you won't say yes to Michael, and you won't kill Sam. He's gonna file that away for
Good thing.
paying attention to in the future. Those are the things
no
that Lucifer says won't happen.
Even though his dad told him to. Save Sam or kill Sam.
Anything else generally from this episode, or just from fan lore and fandom that anyone wants to say?
Any final DTA notes?
We need the dead to teach us about living.
Ooh.
And what is that other quote that gets quoted all the time from DTA talking about?
It's a test.
Yes.
Well, the dead teaching us about living isn't a quote from anything. That's just from my brain.
Yes. Okay, yes.
As somebody that studies the dead.
Yes. And being very thematically appropriate.
Yeah, that's my favorite quote. Fuck, I should have. Let me
Yeah,
look
I was
it
like,
up real
I know.
quick.
Yeah, there's this one quote it's a quote that I feel like sums up the thematically what DTA is doing really well. And why I think this is why I think like the end and this Apocalypse 2014 Chautauqua, like why that has been so interesting in the fandom, is because it gives us so many of these opportunities to explore these themes. Anyway, you have
So
a
the
quote.
quote is from DTA. You don't have to do this yourself. This isn't a test. And if it was, survival is all you have to do to pass. It's a test. It's always a test, but it's easier to pass when he's not alone.
Oh,
And that just ties right back into the whole reason everyone gets obsessed with apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic media is because we are looking for that community and our cultural values to be validated and our identity to be validated. And it's all about people. And that's why 2014 Dean fails because he sacrifices and forsakes his community.
And that's why 2009 Dean, the first two things he does are reconnect with Cass and reconnect with Sam. Like he automatically diverges from that 2014 path immediately on his return. He learns the lesson, not the one that Zachariah was trying to teach. He learns that the thing that will actually save them is each other.
oh.
Finally.
Yeah.
Took him long enough.
God damn. Well, that feels like a fantastic moment to slide right into our Going Meta section, where we are tracking lore, representation, behind-the-scenes trivia, and more. First up, got our rep check. We've gone over quite a bit about how you cannot watch this episode and tell me that Dean Winchester is straight.
Can't do it.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
You'll just be wrong.
But was there anything else that stood out to y'all as far as representation?
This episode's very centered around like Dean and Cass and Zachariah, and there's not a lot of other characters that get a lot of fleshing out, unfortunately, within the camp.
We do get Risa, but all we get her for is to add that this Dean is a problem, and it's not very responsible or respectful.
And then, the unnamed women in Cass's orgy who leave to get washed up together or whatever, which is just not great. Not a good look.
Not a great episode for female characters.
No.
Having agency outside of their sexuality, unfortunately.
But what else is new? It's also a day of the week that ends in Y, so.
Yeah, fuck. It's kind of a weak one for representation besides the great Dean Winchester and Destiel. But we are very heavy on lore this episode. So get this. Just checking into the lore, and we've got a whole new alternate reality established.
Just casual one of those.
No big.
Zachariah frames it as the future, but it's very interesting. That begs a lot of questions about how time works in the supernatural universe and how angels can interact with time.
Like, what kind of access do they have to alternate realities or the timeline in general? What does it look like for them?
Zachariah says, this is what happens if you continue to say no to Michael. So he's saying it's a conditional future. It's just interesting.
It's very interesting because we've seen them travel to the past more than they have the future. And I don't know. I mean, it's the same question because if you're going back to the past, is that an optional alternate past? Because somebody could be going back further than that to change that future. It's all wibbly wobbly.
It makes you wonder how far into the future they can go. Like, are they able to choose between different futures? It just poses a lot of really interesting questions to the lore, while also establishing its own fun little new universe.
Because if the angels have access to every possible future, then they could take this Sam and this Dean and drop them off at a place later on in the future. Let them sit there and be calm and safe for a little while, and then bring them back once everything's all done. I don't. It's a lot. There's a lot there. Having a main character who has the ability to do that time travel, Destiel, is just a little OP.
And we'll continue to see how time travel and the timeline are things the supernatural continues to explore in some future ways in this and other seasons, which is all we'll say on that.
Good. I like this and other season. Okay.
It had never occurred to me till just this moment that it could have just not been the future and could have just been a dream supplied by Zachariah.
Yeah, because there's no real way to measure whether or not you're able to change things in that. Because if you travel to the past, you can put into motion things that you remember happening, and that can be a little bit of proof for you. But traveling to the future, you don't really have a metric for that.
Yeah.
I'd never considered that until like a minute ago. had to vocalize that random new theory.
Hell yeah. Very interesting.
Any other lore? Obviously, we just get more on vessels and such.
They bring back the cult. It's been missing for 5 years. Well, 5 plus, because the cult got sold by Bella, right?
Yeah. season
Yeah.
3.
back in season 3. So we haven't seen it since then. And it took this Dean 7 years to track that down. And since the
Jeez.
last time he saw it, hopefully our Dean gets to it a little bit quicker.
And we can presume that it doesn't work on Lucifer based
Oh,
on,
yeah.
or at least in this alternate possible future. That's Dean goes in to try and kill Lucifer with it, and Dean's the one that ends up dead.
But is that a failure of the gun or a failure of the person holding the gun?
Good question.
Ah,
We'll never know. And we can't tell you.
it's fine. It's fine.
We're so early in season 5. We're so early.
So early. Not much else established for lore.
It is. Oh, I think it's important to just note, like, that Croatoan, this is not the first appearance of Croatoan. We saw Croatoan back in season 2. I think that's I always really liked that follow through where they go, oh yeah, demonic germ warfare. And they bring that through from season 2 because that's, I think, a really strong season 2 episode.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Do they come back to Croatoan?
Nah, we can't tell you that. Why would you think we could tell you that?
Sometimes you do if I catch you fast enough.
Nope.
I'm on my A game today. There's
So we're
too many
watching the
potential
end.
spoilers in this episode.
Yeah.
For us to
We
know.
are on those.
Oh, other lore we know is that angels can become human
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that is
in certain circumstances.
Removing their grace in some way.
Yeah, which we already
Wonder-
knew with Anna, but this is a different sort of situation.
Yeah, very much so.
wonder if that becomes relevant later. Something else we can't tell you.
This is also the first time we see Lucifer Sam, right?
Oh,
So that's interesting. It's something to point out. That'll probably happen again. But
What are you saying, Noah? What are you predicting right now?
nothing, they'll get desperate. Well, that brings us to our last and favorite part of the episode, which is our character blessings. We take a little person from the episode, bless them for something they did or we appreciated them for. Who did you guys want to bless this week? Elayna, how about you start?
ooh, okay. Oh, I feel like I never get to start this category. I am gonna pick specifically 2009 Cass.
Oh,
And it is sheerly because of that stupid little smile he gives Dean at the end when he says, we had an appointment. Because I love it when early seasons Cass makes a joke. Like, it's not really a joke, but like Cass doesn't have a sense of humor at all. So when he has those little moments where it's like he does like a Deanism, like, oh, we had an appointment because we were supposed to meet up. Like, it's so precious. And I just feel like Cass is still glowing a little bit from the last episode.
Yeah.
And so I just bless him for just being so smitten with his little boy he raised from perdition.
damn. That was nice. That was
That's lovely.
powerful.
Yeah, I feel like usually we bless people for like sad reasons, but no, I want to bless him because he's a precious little nougat who deserves it.
Val, how about you?
I'm gonna bless 2014 cast.
Yes.
Yay! I'm so glad.
Because yeah, like everything has shattered around him. His faith is gone. Heaven has betrayed him and left him and caused him to fall. And he has nothing, but he has Dean. And Dean, he is ride or die with Dean literally in this episode. And I respect the hell out of him for that. And I love him for that. And obviously that's something we see that carries on throughout the whole show. This overarching, well, I'll go with you. You need somebody with you. You need support. I'm not going to leave your side. I'm the one that raised you from perdition. I'm going with you. And I just love him. Want to put him in my pocket.
Yeah.
Carry him around all day.
That's so fair.
Such a relatable emotion.
So specific.
I'm going to go ahead and bless 2014 Dean because my guy's been through the ringer clearly and he needs it. And he has lost everybody that means everything to him except for Cass. But even he is not the same. So it's all different. But I just want to bless him for giving it his all the best way he knew how and still trying. August, how about you?
I'm gonna bless 2009 Dean. We're just gonna round it out.
Yeah, as we should.
For, I think, seeing through this whole situation for what it is and coming out of it with this resolve to hold tight to the people that are the best shot he has at salvation, like the best shot he has at revelation, the best shot he has at the truth is Sam and Cass. And this Dean comes out of it with that clarity and immediately goes and says, he says to Sam at the end, like, I don't know what I need to be, but I know I was wrong. Like, that's Dean Winchester admitting when he doesn't know and when he's wrong. And I think there is something really powerful in that moment. And yeah, bless him for that ability to see clearly and to take action towards his people. That I think gets the right message out of this situation.
Very much so. Damn.
I love that.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for coming on today, guys. It was a blast. Val, thanks for coming back. It was a revolutionary conversation, honestly.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I could gush about this episode and the Endverse world forever. So I'm glad that you are cutting us off right now. Because I would hold y'all hostage. I would be Dean torturing, and you would be praying for Zachariah to come put us out of our misery.
I feel like there's going to have to be an Endverse/DTA centric bonus episode.
I think once I finished reading it all the way, I think we might have to revisit this conversation and do a DTA deep dive. So
I look forward to it, and I can't wait. Is there anywhere online that you would like to spread the word about yourself and self-promote? Honk that horn.
Please do, Val. I know, and we said last time you were on, you have some incredible stuff that you do, and people should know about it.
I sell artwork that I do that is largely inspired by this silly little show that has captivated our brainworms under the name Spotted Hound Design. You can Google it and various links will pop up for you to stalk me on.
We will put it in our description
if that is
well.
what you like to do. And I do a lot of other nonsense, but that's not related to Supernatural. So we'll have fun here drawing our little pictures and crying over beautiful, beautiful characters.
And Val says little pictures, but these are like gorgeous representations of characters and themes from Supernatural. You do a bunch of floral prints that are inspired by different characters that are stunning. They decorate up many of my devices and water bottles.
You're making my Dean coding upset.
That's my goal every time you come on is I'm just like,
you just like say nice things at me and I'm like, I want to hide under the table now. Thank you.
But we will link to all of that in the episode description for easy access for any of you listening.
Go check it out. You've got it. But again, thanks for coming on, Val. It was fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
For everyone out there listening, make sure you are subscribed to Saving People Queering Things, so wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to share the show with your friends.
You can find links to our social media and join our Discord server through our website, queeringthingspodcast.com.
And if you are all caught up on Supernatural and want to go back to before the beginning, you can listen to myself and Elayna, along with our friends Beth and KJ, over at Wayward Parents. We have just recently wrapped up the first season of the Winchesters, and we're still clowning. So we have a fun time.
We have so many feelings.
Updates for that show are at Wayward Parents on Twitter or on Tumblr at Wayward Parents Podcast.
Be sure to ride along with us next week as we explore Season 5, Episode 5, Fallen Idols.
Thank you all for coming along for the ride, and we wish you a peaceful road until we meet again.